Hello everyone, welcome back. So this is the series of workflow agent which we are doing, where we are covering everything which we have to get to know about these workflow agent. So this is episode 4.4, that means part 4 of episode 4, where we are going to cover or take a look deep inside the data nodes. So, and as part of earlier videos, I have for this series, I have already covered that what are actually workflow agents, okay, how these all agents nodes category works together in a summary basis, and then we are going through each of those data nodes not data nodes category, but the workflow agents nodes categories deep dives, where we are covering each of these nodes, how we can leverage them and use them within a workflow agents. So I have already covered AI nodes, logic nodes, and the communication node deep dives in my earlier videos. You can check out them. So this is only specific to data nodes deep dive, where we are going to cover these nodes which are available. Those are document processor, business object, external REST, tool which is newly introduced in 26B for chat document processing, which we can upload runtime processing basically for the documents which we are uploading. And then for the deep link, so we can use this tool. And then we have vectordb reader and writer. So if you're new here, don't forget to hit subscribe so you do not miss any part of this series. So let's get into it. So to start with, first I will give you overview of what actually data nodes are, right? So data nodes are quite simply where, let's say, your agent touches the real world. Okay, they are how our workflow reads something within Oracle Fusion Financials, or maybe call some third-party tools, or maybe pull our supplier details or contract details from a PDF attachment. Okay, or maybe uh, call or use some semantic nodes to be able to retrieve the data. So in short, if, as you know, agent is the brain, then data nodes are the hand which provides to be able to perform the action. Like if workflow agent has to perform any actions, we have to use data nodes to be able to perform those actions. So they are the hands. So let's walk through one by of them. What actually are these and how does these work? So starting with this business object node. So here using these nodes, we can query and updates data within Fusion application using REST API. So as you're all aware that we have a REST API to be able to perform, whether we need to fetch a data or we need to create something, maybe transaction, maybe invoice or purchase order or sales order or AR transaction, maybe fixed asset or GL journal. We all have APIs which are available. Now to have those action performed, we have to use business object node. So this is nothing but the direct line to the Oracle system of record. Okay. And then the next come as the document processor. So this is basically reads a specific runtime document and extract it text content. So it works on a specific document based on the document ID. That can be your UCM content ID or any other document ID. There are different document IDs which are available within Oracle Fusion. If we see from SCM perspective, there will be different ways of getting that document ID, and from finance like a UCM document ID. So document processor can perform, reads that runtime document and extract text content in a JSON format. Okay. Then comes the external REST node. External REST node calls any third party or custom maybe REST API or the public APIs which are available outside Oracle Cloud, and we can use them. So business object node is only for the Fusion. External REST node is for external, which are not in Fusion. Although we can also use the Fusion REST APIs with external node. Like I will show you one example where I'm going to show you how to run a OTBI report. So I have used the external REST node because there is no direct REST API which are available to be able to use as a business object node. So we have to use external REST and have that API call out from there. So those are, I mean, that is one of the use cases, but there are other lot of use cases if we have to basically integrate the using a API, okay, with other system. So basically you can think of this as a diplomat that talks to outside world, like, okay. And then we have tool node. As I was saying, this is newly introduced in 26B, and there are different four types of things which are available: the deep link, chat attachment readers, the user session, and the intent change indicator. So we are going to see how each of them works. And then finally at the end, it comes as a vector DB write and vector DB read. So these are nothing but if I talk about vector DB, right? So it stores a chunk of maybe semantic knowledge into Oracle's AI vector database, which is there 20 right now. It is on 23 AI, if I'm not wrong. So it stores the data on that database. So basically, it's a long-term memory where we are writing it to it. And then same data which we are storing or writing on this, we are retrieving and getting it using a vector DB read. So these are 6 nodes, and I would say 9 or 10 distinct jobs which they will do. And we will see, I mean, sometimes what happens that if sometimes we use business object node to be able to trigger for some other systems, and which should not be done, right? So those kind of issue, it should have been an external net rest node, and we have used a business object node, and that creates a issue. So these kind of things may happen, and that's why it is important to understand in which scenario these nodes are helpful and what actually these do within a workflow agent. And before we go into the demo, there is one more thing which I wanted to talk about, that is this difference over here. So there are 4 things, not 3, I would say 3 on the screen, and there is one more which I will talk about. So first is the document processor node. Second is your vector DB writer and reader node. And the final one is your rag document tool node. Okay. And the fourth one is your chat runtime processing, the PDF or the document which we upload, right? So what actually is the difference between all of this and where actually we have to use? So document processor node, if I talk about, right? So let me go into this. So document processor node, if I talk about, so it process runtime document, but for a specific ID. It can be your document content ID from UCM or any document ID, maybe from supply chain, right? For the codes, because there is separate email which are available right now where we can send that email and get that processed, right? So for those kind of scenario, we have to use a document processor. So basically it will process that document and give you a JSON with the text which it fetches from the given document. And then comes vector DB writer and the reader. So it stores whatever the knowledge which we are giving, right? Each of these has their own use case. It is also because it is storing the knowledge only, right? And then we can read that knowledge again if we need it. And third is rag document tool. Again, it is based on the knowledge resource, but it use existing knowledge resource, because when we create a, and if you have seen my AI notes video, I have covered that this tool in detail. So here for rag document tool, we have to have documents pre-added to a tool, and then using those documents which we added, we can have it, uh, whatever the questions which we have for this document, we can ask that question and get the answers. Okay. And but document processor again is a runtime for a specific use case, works on a specific ID. And then vector DB writer and the reader, this Oracle suggests as a best practice to use, maybe store a summary or maybe some other data, right? And then we can fetch that data. Maybe we wanted to store, I mean, I don't know, maybe some summaries which we are getting. But because the main important thing is that we can have one vector DB writer created as part of another agent, and then we can leverage the reader in another agent to call the data, to get the data from the DB writer which we used in another workflow agent. So those are the some of the use cases which we can have it, but it is not recommended for the sensitive or the PII confidential data. We should not dump the raw BO data directly within these vector DB writer or the reader nodes. It is not recommended by Oracle. Okay. So, and then finally, the fourth one, which I was talking about, that is your runtime processing tool, because we now have option within the chat, we can upload file from the local storage or from the get file from the cloud storage, right? And we can process them. So for that, there is another tool which is available, which we have to use for those kind of scenario when we have files available on our drives. So we have to use that. So this is the main differentiation when it comes to these 4 types of tool for the document processing or getting the answers, right? Now let's go into the demo. So now I'm in the AI Agent Studio, and now what we are going to do, we are going to start with very first thing, that is the document processor node. Okay. Now if I go ahead to the agent teams and create a agent, workflow agent. So I'm going to say data node agent one, and then I will say fin maybe other, and then I will select as workflow. So this is data node agent to perform specific task. I'm not writing any specific description. You can, if you're creating for specific purposes, you can write that specific description because that helps in when you're running that agent. That helps a lot. So I'm going to use this default model for now. For now, I'm not doing anything in these tabs. I'm just creating this now. So just so that we know, so this is the data nodes which I'm going to talk about. So first one is document processor, which I will start with. So if I go ahead and add this, so here we get different. So what I will do, I will write this as name as document processor. Then I will say fin payables. Now it requires a business object to be able to process that document, right? To be able to download that document. So now what I will do, I will select that payables document business object which I created. This is the one which I created, and then select that function. Now it for now it is based on the document content ID from where it will fetch the document. So I will say the document content ID is going to be, I will enter that document content ID, and that is going to be the input message, okay, which I'm going to provide. So that will come from the input message, but this can be any other nodes from where you can get the data. But for now I'm going with the input message. So here I'm just selecting that context as an input message. So right now this is there. I will go ahead and create this. Okay. Now, what I will do, I will for now just copy this name of the agent as I need that document content ID. So I will just show you that I'm getting that from there live. So if I go to file, import and export, so now I will just search for my UCM where I uploaded that file. So I will just show you. I will let it search. So this is the file which I uploaded, and here we have this document content ID, which I'm going to leverage. So I will go back again to my AI Agent Studio. Go to my data agent. So I will just search for it, data node agent. I will edit this. And for now, I'm just trying to show you that how this works. So as I selected the input as an input message, so I'm just giving you that UCM ID. Now it start working. You can see now it taken that UCM ID and fetched that data. So there were four rows. Okay, first was the header which has these things, and there are multiple rows separated by this. So first row was this. So this was the invoice number and other details. Then second row was this, and then third row was this. So it fetched that data from the, so this is the CSV file which I used. So for now, like CSV and Excel works, but there are issues which I've identified that may occur if you're using a PDF format. So not all PDF format works. I'm not able to get it work with the PDF. There are weird characters which we receive. So that is the main issue with this document processor right now, which I'm not able to figure out right how to get this over with. So another way to have those PDF document, if you have that to get processed, better to use your chat document runtime processing tool, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. So we get this data. Now we can use this data and use it into any other tool which we need, or maybe node where we need this data. Maybe let's say this was for the invoice creation and we have to create an invoice using this data, right? Or maybe create a code because we received that code. Then we can use this data to create those codes. Okay, so that's how this document processor will work. Okay, now moving on to the second one, right? Now we will talk about, let me just remove this, and now I will talk about business object. So business object is the one which gates or perform action on the data within Oracle Fusion, right? So I will just write it as business object for now. Fin. So for this, I will use a business object. Let me check. I have created for payables, I think. Let me see if I've created that business object to fetch the invoice. Okay. So, okay, I think I have not created. Let me create that business object now. Okay. So what I will do, I will just click on this add, maybe to fin payables. I will write it as get invoice details. Resource type is going to be monolith because that is going to be the API which we are going to use. And now what we are going to do, I'm going to write a description for this that retrieve the invoices details. Okay. Now what we're going to do, this is not the right one, so I will add invoices because that is the right resource path to be able to get that data. And then I will say add from a specification and it will list down all the operation which we can perform. So I'm using a get all for now. Now, if you're not sure how to create a business object, you can check out my another video where I covered end to end how to create business object and its tool. Right now, we are not going to create a tool because as part of workflow agent, we can directly use business objects. We do not need a tool to be created. But if you are building a supervisor agent, then you need to create a business object tool also. So here I will just keep it as it is. The only thing which I'm going to do is I'm going to say only data is equal to true. That means I only want data. There will be multiple things which comes. I do not want it. And then I will say and total results equal to true. And then if I need to put, let's say, limit on number of record which I wanted to fetch, right? Maybe 15. So I'm just entering that limit. So that's it. I do not want to add any parameter or any example uses for this. So this is the one which I'm using right now. Filter it out. So I will just say done. And then I will just say create. Let me copy this. Now we go back again here. I will create data. So here also here from here too, and here if you go this plus icon here also you can select this. I'm just enter this fin payables. So this is the one. Now there is one thing, okay, which is very important. Okay, and what it is that it's better to use simple modes if you wanted to reference specific fields, let's say, because this will retrieve data in a JSON format, right? If you have used a postman to fetch any data using API, it gives data within the JSON format, right? So it is recommended that you specify these field as a best practice. Now when I'm saying as a best practice, I will tell you what all fields you should. Okay, so example of for this can be, because we need items, right? So it has items, so that will be array which will we get, because there will be a lot of invoices which we're going to receive. For now we keep capped as limit as 15, but those are still number of items, like 50 number of items which we are going to receive with different details. So items you should keep, and then you should keep maybe links as separate, because links also which comes at the end, right? Links can also be array, that will be separate. And then you can check maybe if you're using a limit or offset or something like that, then you can use them, or maybe total results, right? So if you have to use this, then you can leverage them and use it in other nodes. Because if you are keeping this output, then I will show you how it becomes easy to select in other nodes, right? So if I, let's say, uh, go to any other node, like where I have to maybe, let's say, I will say, so let me just use LLM node just to show, right? So for now, if I go to business object, if I go to the output, so you can see all these I'm getting items in the array, links in the array, and then the specific fields. But if I have not selected this, then this segregation will not be able to get. Okay. Now within this, like let's say if within this output, if I have to go to a specific item, I will be able to filter it out. And I will show you how we will be able to filter out with this kind of best practice if we are using with the business object. Okay. For now, I will just cancel this. So let's try to run this to see. For now, if there is no parameter, so I will just hit go. So it will run that business object. So you can see we get all these items. So these are items which we get, right? Okay, these are the different items which we are getting. So there are a lot of items which we have. Okay, and we are getting that limit obviously for till 15 because we kept at 15. So we get those. And here there is a new thing which was given by Oracle, that is this copy thing. So we can copy all this, and then you can see the total results. It comes, count it comes, links comes, and then everything is coming, right? So now the point is we can have this data into a format, but if you wanted to have it summarized or maybe put it into Excel, as I said earlier, we have to use LLM node, right, to able to give that data into a specific maybe tabular format, right? So we have to use LLM node. That's why I said when I covered the AI nodes that LLM is the one of the most used node within a workflow agent. Whenever we are building without LLM node, I mean, I have not built any agents. Okay, so that's the benefit of it. Now we know that how we can use business objects. So this is just to fetch the data, and also we can have the creation part using these business node. That if we have any, let's say, if I search on maybe, let me open an incognito mode, and if I search for REST API to create invoice. So if I come here, so here this is in create an invoice. So I use the same one, but instead of get, I could have used post and have this whatever the payload being built out. Although I have to write condition because we have to get the data, and I will show you how we will be able to use this when I will cover the uh, chat reader. Okay, chat document reader. So I will show you how we'll be able to use this. But for now, we can use any API using this business object. Now let's say now I will talk about how we can leverage vector DB writer reader using this as an example. Okay, so let's say we wanted to have all these invoice stored in the vector DB vector database, right? And then maybe I do not want to use REST API to call them again and again. I may store them in the vector DB writer and then leverage them at later whenever I need. I mean, this is just an example. You can use it for storing the maybe summaries, right, for your policies, and then anytime you need, you can able to fetch it, right, that summary in any of the workflow agents if needed. So that's the beauty of it. Now, if I go ahead and add a DB writer, okay, wait. Yeah. So now here there are a lot of things which you could see. Okay. So here we have to write name, then code, then maybe operation type. And this operation type, right, which we have, there are a lot of operation type which you could see. So insert is for new entries. We are inserting it. Overwrite means fully replace whatever it is stored for the given index, because I will talk about what index is. And then upsert is update. Okay. Delete is completely remove for the given index. So these are the four operation which we have. Next come, if I talk about index name, this is important thing because we can reference this index to be able to fetch this data. And within that index, if we have multiple uh, rows, right, of data, then using this document ID within that index, we can fetch that data. So that's the purpose of index. It's just like, let's think about from a database perspective, index name is a table name, and this document ID is your primary key to be able to fetch, filter on the data, right, if you need a specific one. Okay, and then content is your main content which is going to be there. Content type is going to be either JSON or the text. These are the two formats which are available right now. Okay. Now what I will do, as I'm creating this, so I need to write an index. So what I will do, I will use this variable to store that index. So to use that variable, first I have to create that variable. So for now, what I will do, I will just add this variable. Okay, maybe with index name string apply and update. And what I will do, I will do the assignment for this index. Okay, so I will just say logic set variable, and I will say set index. Okay, and then I will say add. I'll select this, and I will write my constant value, maybe let's say demo ap invoice details. It based on what actually you are trying to store. I'm storing invoice details, so I'm just keeping it that way. So I'm just writing this name. But if you have anything which comes from something else, you can have that context selected out from any of the nodes or the other details. So that's it. So I'm just having this edit. Now what I'm going to do, now there are multiple rows which we need to process, right? And without looping, we will not be able to process all those rows if I have to uh, write into a vector database. Okay, so I have to use a looping. Now looping I'm not covering in detail. I will cover in a next video where I'm going to cover workflow control. The next video is going on to this workflow control only, so I will talk about this in that video, all these nodes which are available within workflow control. But for now I'm just using for loop. Okay, and here I'm calling it as process all rows. Okay, and then sequential mode, processing mode will be sequential, one by one it will process. And then what I'm doing, I have to use, which I used the node because I have to process for that node. So this was the business object. Okay, and this was the output, and then I have to use the items. Now it is not able help me getting this selected, so what I can do, I can just have it selected anything else just to let me put this. And then what I can do, I can have it written like output dot items. Okay, because that's how the hierarchy is. If you go here, business object output and then output dot items. So I need to, I'm using this. And if I have not added these ones, then I would not be able to select these like this, because there is a hierarchy which goes within JSON also to be able to fetch it. Okay, in the collection, because JSON is at the end collection also. So I'm just selecting this as items, that all the invoices rows which I'm receiving. So I have to go into the loop. Now in this loop, I'm adding vector DB writer. Okay, and what this vector DB writer is going to do, I'm saying vector DB writer. I'm using a override option only. So index, I have created a variable for that. So I'm going to select that variable from here. So that is my index name. Now in content, this is important thing because this matters a lot, right? When we are storing our data. If you have maybe some LLM summary or maybe a code node, right, which giving you directly structured data, then you can use that directly, right? But I am having a lot of columns and I do not want to store all the columns, right? So what I can do, I can maybe, let me just quickly uh, add nodes, and I'm in this loop. So I will use current item, because for each item, because where it is going on a loop, that means it will go one by one for each of the rows which are available. So I have to use current item. Now I wanted to store maybe, let's say, invoice number, right? And I know, okay, so within that item, there is going to be invoice number field which will come. Make sure you are entering the actual REST API field name which you are getting. I know that invoice number is going to be there, so hence I am entering it directly. So, but what I can also do in this basically content, along with that, I can also write something like this: number is equal to this. Plus, if you use plus, then it will allow me to have this. Plus is important to be able to have this. Otherwise, it might not work. And then within this, I have to be in within the curly bracket. It is very important. Now I will do plus, and then maybe I need to store supplier, right? So what I will do, I will just say supplier. Okay, and then I will say equal to double quotes again, and then what I can do, plus. Plus is important. Then I know that within this invoice number I can also get supplier, and the field name for that is going to be supplier. Okay, this hierarchy is very important. So when you run that node maybe in a postman, you will be able to get to see what are all the field names which are available, and then accordingly you can use them. This is just for example if you're using a business object which for that data which you wanted to store. But if it is something else, as I was saying, maybe LLM summaries, then you can directly use this within that content by selecting the output node from the earlier nodes, maybe LLM node, maybe code node. You can use them directly. But we can have these kind of things like text which I'm adding using this plus and then in quotes, like, so we can have this way considered also if we really need to use them. So this is how we can use them. Contact type, content type, as I said that it can be a text or JSON. I'm just storing this as text. And then finally for this I wanted to give document ID as a invoice ID. So I will just write invoice ID. Now there's a property section out here. So let's say if you wanted to have an extra column which you want to add, maybe let's say invoice source. I'm taking with respect as I'm storing invoice trail. Maybe I wanted to store invoice source. So I will just select invoice source, and then again what I will do, I will just go into the current index for this loop, current item, and then within that current item, I will say because invoice source also comes. Okay, let me just quickly pull that postman up so that I can show you how actually it is coming. So I'm in this Postman right now, and you can see I'm using this fetch API for the invoices. And here you can see those fields: invoice ID is available, invoice number is available, and here if we scroll down maybe a little bit, we will see something like supplier is there. Okay, you can see like this. Maybe you want to put a filter on business unit, you can put a filter on business unit also. So likewise, I'm using that. Okay, now let me go back again to that. This is there. I'm just selecting type as string, apply. So I have now created this. Now what I will do, I will just create this. I have populated everything, the index, the content type, and the document ID. I will just create this. Now I will run this once just to show you how the data looks like. Okay. For now there is no parameter at all. I'm just saying go. I will let it run first the business object and then. So here you can see in process all rows, we are receiving this correction as an array. That means we will process it one by one. And then let's wait for it to get completed to have those all the 15 records which we get written into the vector database. And I will show you how the output looks like for that database. Okay, let's wait, give it a moment. It is taking some time because depending upon the number of record which it has, you can see this all things we use this document type as this document identifier and everything got passed. Okay, now so you may notice that there is something wrong with this, because if you see document identifier is passed as null. That is wrong because we have provided document ID as invoice ID, so that should have been passed, right? So let's see what is wrong. So if I go over here, go into the edit mode. Okay, I've passed this as column. So let's go to the postman and see how the invoice ID looks like. Oh, this is the issue which we could see that ID is in alphanumeric and I have written complete ID. So let me just copy this from here and then replace it with this. Let me just make sure that invoice number is same like that. Maybe supplier is supplier like that. Invoice number is number like that. So this is the issue which we face if we not use that. If we are using any business object to get that data and then storing that into the vector database. So this we have to make sure. So for now, just update it and then again run it. Let's wait for it to get completed. So it does everything, then it will process. Okay, now you can see this document identifier is coming. So that means now it is working fine for us. Okay. The another way which you wanted to check, maybe your document ID got passed successfully, but your maybe content does not pass successfully, right? So what you can do, or what you need to do to be able to check that, you can use vector db read node, because at the end you wanted to read that data if you're storing something, right? So instead of writer, what I will do, I will come here and add as a reader node. Now in the reader, you see vector db, I will say it as reader index name. So we know we use that index name, right, from a variable. So we can use the same variable from here, query. So let's say we are storing the invoice as well as supplies detail, right? So let's say my query was any invoices for supplier. Maybe if I'm hard coding this, I can write, but let me put it in input message. Okay, whatever I'm giving input. Document ID, I do not want to fetch specific anything. So I'm not entering document ID. I do not wanted to put any data field filter, so I'm not doing anything. Maybe I wanted to have a specific thing which I wanted to pull out, maybe using a spreadsheet for that additional field which we added. So for those additional field, we can use this filter criteria like this. So we can use operator using and then the invoice source field which we use, that should be equivalent to the spreadsheet. So I'm just putting it specific, whatever the invoices which are created through source spreadsheet, that should get first. And maximum result is nothing but how many result you wanted to retrieve. I would say 5, maybe 10 I would put for now. Okay, so that's how I can create vector db reader node. So I will just create it. Now if I say here, come here and run this. Now I wanted to provide basically a message, because I wanted to use that for that vector db reader node. So I will say any invoices for supplier Lee supplies. Let it wait for it to complete, although that will again get processed, but I will let it process each step, and then at the end I will see how the data looks like. Now it is always advisable, or as a best practice, we should use LLM node after the vector db reader node. Okay, there is some issue with this, and let's see what the issue is with this. Let's again go back to the db reader node. We passed this correctly. We also passed this correctly. We have invoice source, which is correctly added, and then spreadsheet that is correctly added as a source, because I can go back and check. So here, this is the invoice source, and this is how the spreadsheet is written. So that is, everything is fine. Let's see it again. I have removed the filter criteria which I added. So if I say control Z earlier, how it looks like in this, right? So it was looking like this. And if I just, let's try removing this. If I remove this, say update, let's run it again. And I will say all invoices for maybe Lee supplies. Let it run. Okay. Now you will notice or realize it is giving me more than invoices which are for Lee supplier. It is giving me for RJK Inc., Howell Engineering as well, right? But I only looking for Lee supplies. So that's where what happens. There is a thing which comes, right? This vector search score, text search score, right? These are the things which comes when we retrieve data from the vector DB reader. So that's why there is a LLM node which is needed to be able to fetch the required data from the DB reader. So if I what I do, if I add an LLM node, okay, and I will say final message. I already have prompt with me which I'm going to use. So I will just copy paste. This prompt is like you are a terrible engineer working with vector database, and then I will just write my input which I have, that is going to be from vector DB reader output. For now, what I will just, instead of using this, I will just keep it as this vector DB dot output. Okay. So where vector search score is greater than 0, and then saying then return only chunk that directly explicitly answer the user question, which is coming from the input message, right? So then it will fetch and then give me. So let's see what changes after this now. Any invoices for Lee supplies? Let it run. Now we got this, and then the final message LLM is running. Now you can see I only got this. So this, 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 this. So if you notice why that filter was not working, because all the invoices which you could see, that is for invoice image source, not for the spreadsheet. Now what I will do, let's try adding maybe that filter criteria back again, which we used earlier, right? And then let's see if that works out or not. I will just write invoice space image like this. Okay. Now let's run it again. All invoices for Lee supplies. You will realize how that works out. Okay. Let's let it run and then we'll see. Maybe there is some issue with this criteria that is not working out. But yeah, that's how it works. I mean, there is some issue with this criteria. I'm not sure why it is not working out, but that's how we generally enter the criteria. Let me see if I'm entering the invoice image source name as correctly or not. These all are coming as, no, they see, this is the difference. I'm entering image in caps, and that's where it is going wrong. So it should be like image. And now if I say run, then I will say all invoices for Lee supplies. Now let's see. Now it should return. I mean, that's a case sensitive thing which was playing a role earlier, I feel, but I think it should work now. See, now we get the data. So here earlier it was not working because that value equivalent we are not entering the right way, or the data does not exist. That's why these scores which you can see, right, these important these play a very important role for the vector DB. We get these two scores. That's why for each record, and that's how we got this complete data now. So these all are case sensitive. We have to be keep in mind when we're using these vector DB nodes. All right, let's quickly move on to the next one, that is external REST. Okay, so for this I'm going to create another node. Let me quickly, another agent I would say, data node agent 2. Again I'm going with this other type will workflow data node for external REST. I will make sure that LLM is selected. I will just create it. Okay, and then what I will do, so for external REST, what I'm going to do, I will be running a OTBI report using this external REST node. Okay. Now to run this report, OTBI report, we need a session ID. So I will be using a session ID external REST, and then I will be running that report. Okay. Now what I will do, I will go into this add external REST, and I will say session ID. I will say fin as fin other session ID. I will say session ID, and then there is no parameter as such, so I will just say create. Okay. Now let's quickly run it. There is no parameter for now. I will just say go. So here we are getting this. So this, you can see this is SOAP which I'm running, right? Using external REST. I will not be able to do so with business object because business object works only on REST API, but external REST we can leverage the SOAP API also. Okay. So here we are getting the session ID. Now what I will do, I will leverage the session ID to be able to run a OTBI report, but I need to fetch this session ID first. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use LLM node. Okay. And what this LLM node will do, fetch session ID, and then I already have this node with me. I'll make sure that this input is right. So this is session ID. Okay, this is my input, and I'm just saying that I need value of session ID from this XML input. Okay, let's run it again quickly. So we get now the session ID which we are getting from here directly using that LLM node. Okay, that's the beauty of LLM again. So now what I'm going to do, I'm again going to add the external rows to run the report. Run OTBI report, and I'm just going with fin other, sorry, other. And then I'm just selecting OTBI report now. Function is run report. It needs a session ID, which I'm getting from previous node. So I will just select that node, and I'm just saying create. And at the end, I will just go ahead and run this. I will just say go because I need not to enter any output. I'm running a specific report. Now using that session ID, it is running that OTBI report and then give me output. So you can see I ran this report, okay, and here we are getting the data like this. This is a basically invoice on hold OTBI report which I ran, okay, and this is how the we are getting a data. But now if I need to basically map this into a something better, right? I need to again use LLM for better representing this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to again add a LLM node, okay, and I'm just saying final message to user. I already have that prompt with me which I'm going to leverage. Okay, so this is my prompt where I'm saying you are given an XML data set where each contain generic column text like this. So I'm using this mapping for formatting it to column, and then I'm giving instruction that what actually my instruction are, like parse all row elements from this XML, do not rename or infer any column, replace empty values as null, convert the data into clean markdown table. I'm using this as markdown table, but you can write the table text in terms of if you needed to gate that. Okay, so I'm using that run OTBI output, and then I'm just hitting create. Okay, so for now I'm just, there is no output, so I'm just saying go. Meanwhile, this is working. What I will do, I will use this tab 4 and go into the basically the OTBI. Meanwhile, it is running. So I will just quickly show you how the report looks like. So it is under share folder, custom. Under custom, it is under fin. Under fin, it is under accounts payable. And then this is the one, payables on hold report, which I am using. So I'll just open this. It is running. No, not, I think this is not the one. Wait. So now you can see I got an output like this in a markdown table format, like business unit. And what I can do for this, I will just scroll down to the end and I will just say copy, go to my Excel and just maybe copy again, paste it. Now it is pipe delimited format, and I can just use Excel formatting to put into text and then maybe put it as this one and then finish. So now I have a full-fledged OTBI report output with me in Excel format. That's the beauty of this. Okay. And just to quickly show you how I use this external REST. Okay. So this was like OTBI. Okay. So this I use the same environment link. And then in this, I use this SOAP XML to be able to fetch that. And you can see it, I run payables on hold details report. This one, this was the one which we got, payables on hold details report. So this all the details which we are getting over here, this the same detail I got here. You can see in the same format. And where it was null, it is coming as null, as I written that condition that wherever data is not there, pull it as null, right? So that's how we can do this. So that's the external REST tool which I wanted to talk about. And then finally, I will talk about or show you this tool. So tool I will talk about, this is a very new node which is reinformed on just say tool, but here we have this deep links. We already know that once we click this, and then what we can do, we can have these deep links added to maybe view invoice, or maybe like this view invoice link, right? So we can have this used in our tool node. I'm not going to cover that because this is already a long video which we did, almost it's 1 hour. So that's what the deep link is. Then we have user session. So let's say we wanted to fetch the user detail like user email ID and all those sort of things. We can add this user session tool and we will be able to get that user details like email ID, person number, like that. And then we can further utilize them if we need to send an email to that user who is logged in, right? So we can have those kind of things play using this user session tool. Likewise, if it goes for chat attachment teaser, this is very important, which I want to talk about, okay, quickly. So here there is one thing which is conversation identifier, which is required. So what we need to do, we need to go into this workflow and then select this conversation identifier, that is conversation ID. Now we need to parse file for sure to be able to fetch the data, and then we need to get content in the base 64. Basically I do not require it, but if you wanted to further down consume in the base 64 format, then you can enable this checkbox. I'm not enabling this or not, I just wanted to pass the file. Let me quickly add this. It is now added. So what I will do, I'll just remove everything just to make sure that it is working the way I want it to work. And now what I will do, I have to enable the chat experience to enable file uploads. And then I will be able to see this one. Okay. And now what I will do, I will just have my sample invoice sample attached. So I'm just okay. I want to attach this sample. So I will just this is now attached, and I will just say process. So now what is going to happen? Earlier, what you have to used to do, if you have seen my earlier video, I have covered this as part of the agent because this is released in 26B, and that's the advantage we get. Earlier, we have to create an agent with the same tool, right? Multi-file processor tool to be able to process the runtime PDF within a workflow agent. But now Oracle provided this tool node where we can add this chat attachment and to be able to process this. So I just provided this word sample and it is providing me data in the given format, what actually the data is for which, although we can have it summarized using an LLM node to fetch the actual data, but this is how we will be able to leverage it. So that's it for this. So that is chat attachment teaser, which is the most important thing. And we already covered this user session to fetch the user details. I mean, I can quickly show you, right? If I just say this and just say go, you go into that tool node. You can see it fetched details for me like email address and all those sort of things which I need to do for a given user. Okay, person number which we need to use. So that's a user session tool, which the details which we get. Intent indicator is very new. I have not utilized it, but it just I wanted to change or reset some intent for a workflow in between, maybe due to some other conditions which I have, then we can use this intent change indicator. but I have not utilized this as of now, so that's I'm not able to talk about much with this. But that's all about these data nodes which are available within the workflow agents. So that's pretty much it for the video. I know this is a very long video, but we were having too much to cover. I try to cover it from every perspective, which I could, even in details from every perspective. If you have any questions, do put in the comments. I try to respond to every questions or the issues which you get. I try to comment with everyone. Thank you for watching. Do subscribe, and thank you. See you in the next one.